A lot of action at COP15 tonight. First of all, there was a press release issued from Canada today that they were going to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by up to 40%. This turned out to be a total hoax. Otherwise, at COP15, there was a walkout today, or a threatened walkout by the African and developing nations, the G77, over the threatened abandonment of the Kyoto Protocol. Now, I was able to secure a video interview with one of the core negotiators from the Nigerian delegation. This video interview will be posted later to greenmedianews.com. In the meantime, here is what I've learned. There are two tracks to the negotiations here at Copenhagen. First of all, it may be helpful to go back and talk about Kyoto Protocol just a little bit. Kyoto was a protocol that was going to establish significant and measurable, verifiable reductions of greenhouse gases between the years of 2008 and 2012. The reason that Copenhagen COP15 is such an important conference is because it is supposed to, among other things, extend the Kyoto Protocol beyond 2012 and come up with a new protocol to reduce greenhouse gases even further and make allowances between developed nations like the United States and others and developing nations, and how the developed nations are going to help compensate developing nations for changes in technology requiring their reductions in greenhouse gases, considering the fact that the developed nations, like the United States, have been mostly responsible for greenhouse gas emissions in the planet. Now, what happens is there are two tracks. There's the Kyoto Protocol track and the UNFCCC, which stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, the difference between the two tracks is the UNFCCC talks about basic goals and aspirations for developed and developing nations. However, it had no teeth. The Kyoto Protocol actually had teeth and was going to be the binding agreements by which the countries who ratified the Kyoto Treaty would agree to reduce by significant levels each year. Now, as we know, the United States never ratified Kyoto. What's happening today at COP15 is that the EU delegation has refused to sign any agreement until the United States agrees to sign on to Kyoto Protocol. And the African nations basically are saying that unless the United States agrees to sign on to the Kyoto Protocol, what happens is if the EU backs out of the COP15 agreement, what they're saying is we should collapse one track. Collapse the Kyoto track. This gets a little complex. I'm trying to break it down here. If we collapse the Kyoto Protocol track and fold that into the UNFCCC track, then we continue the negotiations on a one-track track. And the African nations are saying this is possibly the mechanism by which the Kyoto Protocol will ultimately be killed. And therefore, they're threatening to walk out of the COP15 negotiations. Now, what the African delegations are saying is that what they want to do, they don't care if there's one track, two tracks, but the trick is they have to fold in the entire Kyoto Protocol into the UNFCCC guidelines, therefore giving UNFCCC the effective teeth that it needs. Excuse me while I'm trying to break this down into plain English. Basically, the sticking point is MRV, measure, report, verify. If we can't monitor effectively and report transparently and verify reductions in greenhouse gases across borders, then whatever is agreed to at any of these conventions is absolutely meaningless. So the African and developing nations are demanding that MRV provisions be included in any one-track or two-track negotiations. Now, if we put the Kyoto Protocol into the UNFCCC in its entirety, the African nations will continue to participate in these negotiations. However, the United States is likely to veto any MRV provisions because the United States doesn't generally historically like other nations to poke into the way we do business. Now, this is such a critical time in the negotiations. It is critical that the United States get on board with MRV and agree to join the other nations in agreeing to sign on to these basically provisions with teeth. The MRV provisions must hold, and therefore that will keep the COP15 negotiations in place. What we hope for is that all nations will participate in a concerted effort to measure, report, and verify greenhouse gas reductions so that we can effectively combat the effects of global climate change and mitigate that climate change. So tomorrow, I hope to secure an interview with a negotiator from the EU delegation. Later tonight, I hope to be posting the interview I received from the Nigerian delegation, reporting from COP15 in the Bella Center at Copenhagen. This is Evan Kopelson from Green Media News.